Hi there, I'm Delara. My sister kicked me out of her graduation because I work at a nail salon. She said I'd embarrass her in front of her boyfriend's family. But what hurt more? She erased me from her speech, like I was never part of her journey at all. Then came the lies, the smear posts, the fake pity. They used my name, like it was theirs to rewrite, so I did something they didn't expect. I stopped paying for her grad school, and that was just the beginning. Want to know what happened when the truth finally came out? Subscribe to hear the full story. You're not going to believe how far family will go until they go too far. The sun was just starting to dip behind the tall palms that lined UC San Diego's campus when I pulled into the parking lot, my fingers clenched tightly around the bouquet of sunflowers resting in the passenger seat. I had picked them out the night before, brighter than roses, less cliché. Soraya used to say sunflowers made her feel loud in the best way. I thought maybe, just maybe, they'd remind her of that, remind her of me. I'd closed my salon early that day, canceling 2 full appointments and rescheduling one of my longest clients. They didn't complain. They knew how much this graduation meant to me, not just for her, but for me too. I was the one who had worked nights, doubled shifts, taken out loans when things got tight, just to make sure she stayed in school without ever missing a beat. Walking toward the venue, I smoothed my blouse down for the 3rd time. A deep blue silk one I hadn't worn since my birthday dinner last year. I had even gotten a blowout that morning. Ridiculous, maybe, but I wanted to look like someone worthy of being included, someone they wouldn't be ashamed of. I spotted Mom before she saw me. She was standing near the entrance, chatting with someone in a navy suit. Her voice, always a few decibels too loud, carried over the hum of the crowd. When she turned and caught my eye, her smile faltered. Just slightly, but enough. "Delara," she said, stepping away quickly. "You look nice." "Thanks," I said, trying to hand her the flowers. She didn't take them. "Sweetheart, listen, I was just about to text you." My stomach turned. "What's going on?" She glanced around, lowering her voice. Well, Soraya thinks maybe it's best if you don't come in today." I stared at her, half convinced I'd misheard. "I'm sorry, what?" "She's nervous, honey. Kyle's parents are here, and some of the professors. It's very formal. She's just worried about the optics." "Optics?" I echoed, laughing without humor. "I do nails, Mom. I don't juggle flaming torches." She winced. "It's not about you. It's just, she's trying to make a good impression." My chest tightened. "So I'm not part of that impression?" "It's just for today. Don't make this a bigger deal than it is." I held up the bouquet, then slowly lowered it. "Wow. I'll make sure she calls you tonight, okay? We'll do brunch next weekend, just us girls." I nodded, numb. "Sure, sounds great." I turned before she could say anything else, the flowers still in my hand, petals brushing against my arm like a quiet apology. I didn't cry. Not there. Not in front of people who already thought I didn't belong. I ended up at a small park 2 blocks down, one of those little green spaces squeezed between apartment complexes and overpriced coffee shops. I sat on a bench, logged into the live stream, and watched my sister walk across the stage. Her hair was perfect, her gown crisp. She beamed like someone who had won something more than a degree. She thanked our mom. She thanked Kale. She even thanked a former tutor who once ghosted her halfway through the semester, but not me. Not a single word. I let the screen go dark and stared ahead. Somewhere behind me, kids were laughing. A dog barked, a car alarm hiccuped and fell silent. The world didn't care that I'd just been erased. In my mind, I saw every late night I had stayed up to transfer money before a deadline, every call from her, "Hey sis, can you help with my books? My rent's due early. Do you think you could spot me for this conference fee?" And me, always saying yes, always showing up, always covering. And now, I wasn't even good enough to be seated in the audience. I wanted to feel anger, but all I could feel was gone. Like I'd been peeled out of my own life and replaced with someone who didn't matter. I sat there for a long time after the ceremony ended. The sunflowers drooped in my lap, their golden faces turned down. Maybe they knew too. I slipped off my shoes the moment I walked through the door, the silence in my apartment swallowing the sound of the latch behind me. The air was still warm, filtered through the open kitchen window, where the scent of coastal jasmine drifted in like a memory I didn't ask for. I didn't turn on the lights. There was something about the dimness that made the weight in my chest feel more honest. I poured a glass of wine, cheap, red, still half full from a bottle I'd opened 2 nights ago, and sat on the couch, still wearing the same blue blouse that I had once imagined would make me feel proud, polished, visible. The bouquet of sunflowers rested limply on the counter. I couldn't bring myself to toss them out. The TV stayed off. The only sound was the occasional vibration of my phone, buried somewhere deep in my purse. I didn't want to look at it. But eventually, I did. One message glowed against the dark screen. Zamira, I need to tell you something. I overheard Mom and Soraya. She didn't want you there. Said your job would make her look bad. I stared at the screen for a long time, the words blurring together. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a moment of bad timing. It was orchestrated. Zamira again. They planned it 2 weeks ago. Your name wasn't even on the guest list. There it was. The clean, cold blade of betrayal. Not impulsive, not emotional, strategic, surgical. And it wasn't the first time, not even close. I thought back to last Christmas. Soraya had thrown a party for her law school friends, hosted at our mom's house, catered, decorated, playlist curated to perfection. I only found out because someone tagged her in a photo on Instagram. She was laughing, arm around Kale, standing in front of a banner that read, "Future JD, Present Queen." I hadn't been invited. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off with a fake laugh. Oh, it was just something thrown together last minute, mostly classmates. Except the post had gone up a week in advance. Can't wait to celebrate with my favorite people. I wasn't one of them. There was also that afternoon I happened to be near her campus and texted to say I could take her out to lunch. She hesitated, then told me to meet her outside her dorm. When I showed up, she came down already holding her books. We sat awkwardly on a bench while she rushed through a half-hearted salad. The moment I mentioned a new nail technique I was learning, she shifted the subject to some professor's research. She never introduced me to a single person walking by. And how could I forget all the times we'd be in a family gathering and someone would ask what I did? She never said, "Delara owns her own business." It was always, "Oh, she works with people's hands," or "She's in beauty, something," as if my work was shameful or worse, irrelevant. Now it all formed a pattern I had refused to look at for years. I wasn't left out by accident. I was erased. Glass still in hand, I walked to the window and stared out at the night, the city lights flickering like false promises. A part of me wanted to believe this was just Soraya being young, overwhelmed, maybe insecure in front of her boyfriend's family. But no. She had told Mom what she wanted. Mom had agreed, and no one thought I deserved even a heads up. I swallowed the last of the wine, the burn a poor distraction from what I actually felt. I had given her everything, covered rent, paid for books, bought the laptop she used to type those polished speeches where she thanked everyone but me. And what did I ask for in return? A seat, one chair in a crowd. But she didn't want to risk anyone thinking we were cut from the same cloth. She had climbed a ladder I built for her, then kicked it down once she reached the top. I stood there, still and shaking, letting the full weight of it land in my gut. I'd been invisible for years, clinging to the fantasy that family meant unconditional love. But maybe love wasn't blind. Maybe it just chose not to look at people like me, and maybe I'd been too willing to accept that. For the first time, I saw my sister for who she really was, and I was done pretending not to. Sleep didn't come easily that night. My body ached with exhaustion, but my mind refused to shut down. Even as the apartment went still and the streets outside fell quiet, something inside me kept humming, like a low, persistent alarm that wouldn't let me rest. By the time the sky began to lighten, I was already awake, lying on my side, staring at the outline of my laptop across the room. I'd left it open on purpose. At first, I told myself I'd just check my emails, maybe pull up next week's schedule for the salon. But I knew better. I wasn't avoiding anything anymore. I walked across the room, dragging the blanket around my shoulders, and sat down. The laptop screen flickered to life. The calendar notification was waiting for me. UC San Diego, payment reminder. $21,500 due in 14 days? My finger hovered over the dismiss button, but I didn't press it. Instead, I opened the university portal. I had logged in so many times before, the username and password filled automatically. My name was still listed as the primary financial sponsor on Soraya's account. Right below it, the amount due stared back at me like a dare. Tuition, library fees, program expenses, all bundled into a neat red total. $21,500. I'd paid versions of that same number every semester, on time, in full, without thanks. There were no discounts for Betrayal. A memory hit me. Me, 27, working back-to-back shifts during holiday season just so I could send her first tuition payment on time. I had gone home with blisters on my hands, sore from filing acrylics and massaging calloused feet, while she posted pictures of study groups in glossy libraries with cappuccinos and captions like grind mode. I never asked her to repay me. I never asked for credit. But somehow, over time, she'd convinced herself that I didn't deserve even acknowledgement. My cursor moved toward the Manage Payment tab. I clicked. A drop-down appeared. Remove Payment Method. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. Just one quiet click and a simple pop-up. Are you sure you want to remove this account as a payer? This action cannot be undone. I stared at the screen for a moment longer, half expecting the guilt to crawl in like it always did. But it didn't. I clicked yes. There was no applause, no cinematic music, just a soft chime and the message, payer removed, confirmation complete. I closed the laptop. Then I stood and walked to the kitchen, where I poured myself a cup of coffee. No sugar, no cream. I leaned against the counter and took a sip, the bitterness grounding me. The apartment was quiet, save for the hum of the fridge and the soft buzz of traffic in the distance. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe in my own home. No invisible weight, no dread about due dates. No fear that she might need something I'd be expected to provide without hesitation. I thought cutting her off would feel cruel, I whispered aloud, not to anyone, just to the silence. But it didn't feel cruel. It felt fair. I had spent so long tying my worth to being dependable, being useful, being the one who never said no. But I wasn't her foundation, I wasn't her doormat, and I wasn't her investor. I was her sister. And she made it clear that wasn't enough. My phone lit up across the room. Malin. I didn't answer. Another buzz, then another. A voicemail notification followed, which I also ignored. I took another slow sip of coffee and walked over to the window. The sun had risen fully now, casting a warm glow across the street. A jogger passed by with a golden retriever. A kid rode past on a skateboard, earbuds in, lost in his own world. I picked up my phone and opened the university app one last time, just to make sure. There it was, no active payer associated with this account. I smiled. A small, quiet thing. This was just the beginning. I knew it. The storm hadn't hit yet, but it would. When Soraya checked her account. When Malin realized her backup plan had vanished. When someone finally understood that the girl who worked in a nail salon was also the woman who could make choices. This time, when the phone rang again, I didn't even look. The next morning, I buried myself in work. The smell of acetone, warm towels, and lemon cuticle oil wrapped around me like armor as I prepped my third client's nails for a gel fill. The gentle whir of the nail drill, the faint chatter of blow dryers from the neighboring salon suite. Everything felt normal. Or at least it was trying to. But my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Every few minutes the vibration would jolt the table where I kept my appointment book. At first, I thought it was just reminders. Then I glanced at the screen between clients and saw the notifications. Instagram tags, DMs, message requests, one after the other like hail pounding on a window. Something had dropped, and I didn't need a weather report to tell me who started the storm. When my last client left and the waiting area was quiet, I finally gave in. I stepped into the back room, wiped my hands, and opened my phone. There it was. Soraya's Instagram story, a close-up of her face, perfectly lit, puffy-eyed but filtered. The caption read, "Some people love money more than family. Sad how jealousy can ruin everything." Below that, a selfie of her with Kale, both smiling, tight-lipped in a living room I didn't recognize. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. The comments came fast. "So sorry you're dealing with this. Family can be so toxic. You don't need that energy. Did your sister really do that? That's next-level petty." Someone had even reposted it to Twitter. I hadn't realized until a former classmate DM'd me. "Wait, is Soraya talking about you? I thought you paid her tuition?" The words on my screen blurred. I scrolled, watching the narrative spiral out of my hands. People I hadn't spoken to in years, mutual friends, acquaintances, old clients, were liking the post, adding their 2 cents, resharing it like it was gospel. I locked my phone and leaned my head against the cabinet door, the cool surface grounding me. Of course she wouldn't confront me. That would mean dealing with the truth. But painting herself as the poor, betrayed little sister online? That was Soraya's specialty. Drama, dressed in sympathy and sprinkled with self-righteousness. I returned to the front just as my 2:30 appointment walked in. Evelyn, one of my longest-standing clients. She usually greeted me with a hug and a loud, "Tell me everything," but today her smile was tight. "So," she said, settling into the chair. "Crazy week, huh?" I kept my tone even. "I've had better." She flipped through the polish samples. "I saw a post. Wasn't sure if it was about you. You know how social media is. People twist things. Just thought I'd ask." I smiled politely. "Not everything you read is the full picture." Her eyes lingered on me. "No, I guess not." We didn't speak much after that. When she left, she didn't rebook. An hour later, my receptionist whispered with one of the junior techs while glancing toward me. I didn't ask what it was about. I didn't need to. The damage had started. That night, I sat on my couch again, this time with my legs curled under me and my laptop open, not for payments, but for damage control. I hovered over the new post button on Instagram for a long time. I could have told the truth. I could have posted screenshots, financial records, even the university confirmation that I was no longer Soraya's payer. I could have tagged her directly and watched the flood of sympathy she'd collected start to shift. But I didn't, because that's what she wanted. She wanted a public war. She wanted me to play the villain in her polished little fairy tale. Instead, I posted a single quote. "Silence doesn't mean guilt. Sometimes it means dignity." No caption, no tags, just that. Then I put my phone down, leaned back, and closed my eyes. Let them wonder. But if she kept twisting the story, she'd soon hear mine too, loud and clear. Friday afternoons were our busiest time. The scent of lavender hand cream and fresh polish lingered in the air. Hairdryers hummed next door, muffled by the salon walls. Clients chatted softly at their stations while the radio played a summer pop song on low volume. For a moment, everything felt manageable. I was finishing up a gel overlay when the front door slammed open so hard it rattled the waiting room sign. Everyone turned, and there she was. Soraya stood in the doorway like she'd stormed straight out of a courtroom, face flushed, arms crossed, mouth already loaded. "You really think cutting me off makes you some kind of hero?" she barked, loud enough to turn every head in the salon. "You destroyed my future." The room froze. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. Not this time. I placed the nail file gently on the table, turned to my client with a calm voice. "Excuse me for a moment." Soraya stepped forward before I could even rise. "How could you do that to your own sister? You left me with nothing. Nothing." I walked toward her slowly, meeting her at the center of the salon. The line between personal and professional now burned to ash. "Please step outside, Soraya," I said quietly. "This isn't the place." "No," she snapped, her voice climbing. "You made it public the second you pulled the payment. You humiliated me. Everyone thinks I'm some entitled brat now because of your little quote post." She waved her phone in the air as if it were a weapon. "You made me look like a monster!" The clients stared, some wide-eyed, others politely pretending to read magazines that were upside down. My staff froze behind their stations, unsure whether to intervene or just disappear. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't break eye contact. "You erased me, Soraya," I said, even and steady. "At your graduation, at your parties, in every introduction where I went from being your sister to being invisible." She blinked, caught off guard by my calm, but I wasn't done. "I didn't ruin your future," I continued. "I just stopped funding it." A hush fell over the room like someone had turned off the air conditioning. Soraya's jaw tightened. "You're bitter. You're jealous. You couldn't stand that I was making something of myself." "No," I said. "I just stopped pretending that love meant tolerating disrespect." At that moment, Harry, my senior employee, stepped forward with perfect composure. "Ma'am," he said, "if you don't leave now, I'll have to call building security." Soraya laughed sharply. "Seriously? You're kicking me out?" He didn't blink. "This is a business, not a battleground." She looked at me for a response, for backup, for anything that might let her stay and reclaim control, but I gave her nothing. She huffed, shot one last glare around the room, and turned on her heel. The door closed behind her with a click that felt like punctuation. Final, clean. No one spoke for a beat. Then one of my newer technicians whispered, "You okay, Del?" I turned to her and nodded, though my throat was tight. "Yeah, I'm fine." Evelyn, the client who'd been distant earlier in the week, raised her coffee cup from the waiting area. "That," she said, "was the classiest mic drop I've ever seen." The room let out a soft chuckle. Tension cracked just enough for people to breathe again. I walked back to my station, picked up the nail file, and smiled at my client. Where were we? The rest of the day passed in a strange rhythm. People treated me differently, not with pity, but with something else, a quiet kind of respect. Not everyone knew the full story, but they'd seen enough. By the time we locked up, the sun was dipping low over San Diego. The city hummed outside, alive with weekend energy. My employees helped tidy the space, wiping down tables and organizing polish racks. No one brought up what happened. No one had to. When the last light was turned off and I sat alone in the office with the day's receipts, the silence felt different. Not empty. Earned. "She thought yelling would break me," I whispered to the dark. But all she did was give me back my voice. She left with her voice raised, but for the first time mine was louder. Sunday mornings were sacred to me. No alarms, no clients, just my coffee, my balcony, and the hum of a city slowly waking up beneath a May sun. For once I had planned to disconnect, clear my head, water my succulents, maybe even bake something ambitious I'd seen on TikTok. But peace is a fragile thing when your family doesn't respect your boundaries. I reached for my phone to check the weather, but a subject line on my email screen stopped me cold. "Tuition extension request. Confirmation received." I blinked, then opened it. The message was polite, bland, sterile in that bureaucratic way. "Thank you for your request to extend payment for the upcoming semester. Our office has noted the delay. New balance deadline, July 1st. I hadn't sent anything, but someone had used my name. At the bottom was a contact line. Sent from Delara Calloway, primary financial sponsor. Number, no. I read it again, and then again, this time scanning for clues. Language, punctuation, phrasing. One sentence stood out. "I would greatly appreciate your leniency during this transitional time for my family." That wasn't me. That was Malin. That was my mother's brand of guilt-drenched diplomacy, syrupy sweet, layered in implication. I'd seen her write emails like that to HOA boards, church groups, even distant cousins she wanted donations from. She hadn't just disrespected my choice, she had impersonated me. My jaw tightened as the full weight of what she'd done landed on my chest like concrete. She didn't call, didn't ask, didn't care. She just did it. Used my name like it belonged to her. I didn't throw my phone, I didn't scream. I just stood there in the kitchen, the coffee pot bubbling behind me, and called her. She picked up on the second ring. "Lara, honey," she said, voice too chipper. "I was hoping you'd call. Did you contact the university pretending to be me?" Silence. Then a fake cough. "What are you talking about?" "The tuition office, the extension request. Don't insult my intelligence, Malin." She sighed like I was the one being difficult. "I didn't pretend, I just stepped in. You were upset, I figured you'd cool off." "You forged my name." "I didn't forge anything," she insisted. "It was just an email. I didn't sign a legal form." "You pretended to be me?" I repeated, each word slicing clean. "That's identity fraud, Mom." "Oh, don't be dramatic." I laughed. Not kindly. "You always do this. You twist reality until you feel justified. You violated my decision. You used me to keep enabling her, again." Her voice dropped into that familiar guilt tone. "You used to care. You were never this cold." "I used to be used. That's not the same thing." She scoffed, soft but full of disdain. "All this over one email? You'd really burn your whole family over this?" "I'm not burning anything," I said. "I'm just refusing to keep carrying what's already in flames." Then I hung up. I didn't wait for her to call back. I already knew she would, and I wasn't interested in a sequel. Instead, I forwarded the university the email with a firm message. This request was submitted fraudulently. I did not authorize it, and I am no longer the financial sponsor for Soraya Calloway. Please confirm removal of all access and association. They responded within the hour. The account was flagged. Her enrollment would remain pending unless a new payer was listed. Next, I blocked Malin's number. Not silenced. Blocked. No more guilt. No more back doors. No more pretending blood was reason enough to excuse betrayal. I spent the rest of the afternoon cleaning, not out of stress, but clarity. I folded laundry, reorganized my pantry, even cleaned the lint trap in the dryer. It was strange how one act of violation could lead to such fierce resolve, because I realized something that day. They hadn't just lost my support. They'd lost access to me, not just my money, my time, my name, my silence. They used my name without my permission. From now on, I'd use my voice without theirs. By Monday morning, my notifications were an avalanche. I was sitting in the back office of the salon, sipping from a lukewarm mug of green tea when I saw it. A new Instagram account, anonymous, of course, but unmistakably Soraya's handiwork. The username was something vague and pitiful, like at Healing from Family. The profile bio read, "Some people only love you when they can control you." I knew where this was going, and she didn't disappoint. The stories were vague enough to avoid direct accusation, but the message was clear to anyone who knew us. I've always been the target of envy. Some people can't stand when their sibling shines brighter, especially if they feel stuck in their own life. The next slide was an old photo from when Soraya was accepted to law school, me in the background holding a cupcake with a tired smile after an 11-hour shift. The caption? "Some smiles hide resentment." Subtle as a slap to the face, and the comments flooded in. "Wow, so brave for speaking up about toxic family dynamics? She's clearly been jealous since forever. I always knew you were the strong one, babe. Keep shining." The worst part? People I knew, some distant relatives, even a couple of my mom's church friends were commenting, liking, sharing. Then came the texts. "Dilara, what's going on between you and Soraya?" "I saw her post. You didn't really say those things, did you? Is this true? You've always been so supportive. This doesn't sound like you." It felt like standing in a crowd while someone painted a mural of lies with my face on it. I didn't cry. Not yet. I sat back, breathing through the tightness in my chest, letting the noise swirl around me. My staff moved quietly outside. Someone knocked once, then thought better of it. I opened my audio notes folder. I knew the file was there, buried under memos, reminders, a few voice drafts for marketing videos. I scrolled, found it, and pressed play. The voice was unmistakable. "Soraya, that's harsh," Malin's voice said. "She's your sister. She's done so much." And then Soraya's words, clean and sharp. "I don't want her at my graduation. She works at a nail salon, Mom. Kyle's parents are doctors. You want them thinking we come from that?" It hit harder the second time. Not because it was shocking, but because I'd finally stopped making excuses for her. That recording was from 3 weeks ago. I'd captured it during one of Malin's calls, when she put me on mute but forgot I could still hear. At the time, I told myself it wasn't worth sharing, that posting it would make me look petty. But now? Now I understood something. Silence wasn't noble, it was just fuel for their version of the story. That evening, I drove to meet Zamira. We sat in her car outside a quiet strip mall, our to-go coffees steaming between us. I played the recording. When it ended, Zamira was quiet. Then she said, "You want me to post it?" I looked over. "Do you think people deserve to know?" Her eyes didn't flinch. "Absolutely." By the time I got home, the post was live. Zamira kept it simple. Let's not rewrite history. Let's not pretend the truth didn't happen. She attached the voice memo, unedited. Within an hour, it was spreading like wildfire. First came the comments, "Oh, so this is what really happened. I supported the wrong sister. She erased her own blood to impress strangers. Unbelievable." Then came the texts, from the same relatives who had been so quick to question me just days before. "I'm sorry, Delara. I didn't know." "This changes everything." Even Kale's cousin unfollowed Soraya and messaged me privately. "Just wanted to say I see you now." That took guts. I never responded. Not out of bitterness, but because I finally didn't need to explain myself. The truth had a voice of its own, and it was louder than any lie Soraya could craft in a caption. I didn't go online that night. I made a late dinner, miso soup and grilled tofu, and lit a candle. The apartment felt still, calm. No phone buzzing, no urge to retaliate. Because for the first time, I wasn't on defense. I was free. She wanted pity. She got the truth. This time, I didn't raise my voice. The truth did it for me. The morning after the recording went public, my phone lit up like a Christmas tree. But this time the messages weren't venom. They were velvet-wrapped apologies, hesitant check-ins, quiet acknowledgments. The same people who'd ghosted or guilt-tripped me just days ago were now crawling back, their words wrapped in regret and clumsy sympathy. I didn't know the full story. "That recording? Wow. You didn't deserve that." I didn't respond, not out of spite, but because, for once, I didn't need their validation. The truth had already done its job. It was a strange kind of peace, heavy but clarifying. I arrived early at the salon, needing the familiar rhythm of work to steady myself. The scent of acetone and jasmine tea was oddly grounding. I moved through the opening routine in silence, turning on lights, checking appointment logs, wiping down the front desk. My employees trickled in with uncertain smiles, but no one said a word about the posts. Their support lived in the way they kept the music upbeat, the way they shielded me from nosy clients, the way they offered to cover an extra shift without asking why. By mid-afternoon, the group chat I used to be part of, my family's sacred digital living room, was in flames. Screenshots poured in from Zamira. Kale had commented publicly under the post, "So this is what you were hiding? You trashed your sister to look good? For what?" Minutes later, a friend of his reposted the clip, tagging Soraya. She tried to clean it up, deleted stories, vague apologies, then a melodramatic selfie captioned, "No one sees the pain behind the mask." But the mask had already shattered. By the evening, the university had responded to the email I'd sent the week before, confirming they'd flagged the tuition request and rejected the extension. And then came the message. From Soraya. Just 2 words. "You win." I stared at it for a long moment, then locked my phone and set it down. That night, I cooked a slow dinner, pan-seared salmon, roasted asparagus, lemon rice. I plated it carefully, lit a candle, and let the quiet wrap around me like a second skin. There was no music, no TV, just the sound of a woman finally claiming her own evening. The next morning, Malin called. I let it ring once, twice. Then I picked up. "We need to talk this out like family," she said. Her tone was clipped, wounded, layered with disappointment, dressed as dignity. "I'm not interested in talking," I replied evenly. "I'm interested in healing, and that doesn't require your permission. You can't just shut us out." "I can." I ended the call before she could finish whatever final guilt trip she had tucked in her throat. Later that day, I opened Instagram. My fingers hovered for a second. Then I posted, "Helping someone and enabling them are not the same thing. I learned that the hard way, but I've learned it now." No hashtags, no tags, no comments turned on. I didn't need the noise. That same afternoon, I left the family group chat. No dramatic exit, no parting words. Just left the conversation. It felt more powerful than any argument I'd ever had with them. By Friday, I was sitting in my office reviewing blueprints for the new salon location. A tiny spot in Oceanside, closer to the water. More foot traffic, more freedom. Something that was mine and no one else's. The walls were still unpainted, and the ceilings needed work, but I saw the vision clearly, like I'd finally scrubbed the fog off a mirror that had distorted me for far too long. I poured myself a mug of coffee, took a deep breath, and let the silence settle. Not the heavy kind, not the kind that made you feel invisible. This was silence with intention. I looked out the window, sunlight bouncing off passing cars, and for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I owed anyone an explanation for the woman I had become. She lost more than my money. She lost access to the version of me that stayed silent. The floor still smelled like fresh varnish, and the white walls of my second location glowed under the soft morning sun. I walked slowly through the open space, fingers grazing the edge of a new reception counter. There were no framed photos on the walls yet, no voices echoing through the rooms, but possibility hummed in the air like music only I could hear. The chairs had arrived yesterday. The water heater was finally fixed. The big mirror, my favorite, was still leaning against the back wall, waiting to be mounted. I paused in the center of the space, took a deep breath, and closed my eyes for a moment. This was mine. Built not on borrowed money or quiet resentment, but on choice, on clarity. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. I pulled it out, expecting maybe a contractor or a delivery. Instead, it was Malin. "Your grandmother would be proud of you. We miss you. Please come for dinner." No emojis, no guilt-ridden paragraphs, just a single line dressed as kindness. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering above the reply button. For a moment, I felt that familiar tug, of duty, of family, of second chances, but I locked the phone instead. That small action felt like closing a chapter without slamming the book. Back when we were little, Soraya and I used to play pretend salon in the garage. She'd sit in a plastic lawn chair while I wrapped her hair in mismatched scarves and rubbed lotion on her hands with too much pressure. We used my mom's old lipstick as pretend polish and laughed until our stomachs hurt. I used to think that meant we'd grow up to run a business together one day. I used to believe that shared memories guaranteed shared futures, but the truth is we were just kids pretending. We grew up and became strangers wearing the same last name. Maybe we were never meant to grow into the same world. And maybe that's okay. The opening event was modest, just close friends, loyal clients, and a few curious new neighbors. Zamira showed up early, carrying a bouquet of lavender and a box of pastries from the bakery we used to visit after school. "You look lighter," she said, tucking a strand of hair behind my ear. "Like you finally exhaled." "I think I did." She helped me tie the ribbon across the entrance. It wasn't glossy red or theatrically wide, just a satin strip in deep emerald green, the same shade I painted the front door. As we cut the ribbon together, applause broke out. Not loud or staged, just warm, sincere. People clapped because they wanted to, not because they were told to. Kyle walked by later in the afternoon. He didn't stop, didn't speak, but he looked me in the eye and nodded, A gesture that said, "I get it now." That was enough. Somewhere in the corner of my mind, I imagined Soraya sitting alone, scrolling through posts, trying to rewrite the story again. Maybe she still believed I was the villain. Maybe Malin still saw herself as the peacemaker in a war she silently fueled, but it didn't matter anymore. Forgiveness and reunion aren't the same thing. I'd already forgiven myself for waiting too long, for giving too much, for not speaking sooner. That was the kind of grace I could offer freely. The sky dimmed into soft pinks and blues as the event wrapped up. I stood in the doorway of my new shop, watching people linger outside, chatting, laughing, admiring the space I had created. There was no grand announcement, no fireworks, no viral video, just a woman, finally standing in her truth. They called it silence. I called it freedom. And if there's one thing this story taught me, it's this. Silence doesn't make you the bigger person when it costs you your dignity. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is to walk away, not in anger, but in clarity. So let me ask you, have you ever been the one holding the family together until you realized they were only holding you back? If that hit close to home, you're not alone. I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Let's talk about it. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more true-life stories like this one. Your voice matters here, just like mine finally did.